What's up, everybody? Thanks again for stopping by for another edition of March 4th with Mike Bauman. I, of course, am your host, Mike Bauman. Whoever you are, wherever you are listening from, thank you so much for checking out the podcast. If you're a returning listener, I greatly appreciate your continued love and support. And if you're a brand new listener of the show, man, thank you so much for hopping aboard that pirate ship. You can follow me on Instagram at March 4th Pod. I am on YouTube at March 4th Pod. I'm also there on TikTok at March 4th Pod. Hey, you know what? If you made it here, then that means you found me somehow. And I truly appreciate each and every one of you taking the time to check out another edition of the March 4th with Mike Bauman podcast. How is everybody doing, man? I hope that life finds you well as this is hitting your eardrums. We are fresh off the holiday weekend for Memorial Day here in the United States where I reside. And it was a pretty solid weekend. Unfortunately, had some bad weather, which is never cool when it's raining on the picnic. You know what I'm saying? But I was able to get outside, do a little hiking. It's always cool when you find new places, even when you've been in the same place for a while, if that makes sense. For those of you that listen regularly, I like to get outside. I'm a bit outdoorsy. I'm not like, like I can't go into a wood, into the woods and build like a friggin' functional tree fort. You know what I'm saying? I'm not handy like that. I just see your boy likes to get out and do a little walking and get out of his head because I've got some anxiety. But for realsy though, it's I actually took a little drive-o. A couple weeks ago. I found this spot and I was just like, you know what, man, I need to get out of the apartment. I've been a little burnt out lately just between work and burning the candle at both ends. I love doing the podcast, but I've just been a little burnt out. You know what I'm saying? And it's always good to recharge the battery. So in addition to taking a trip home, meeting my new nephew, shout out Vic and Kay and Josh. I love you guys so much. Shout out my mom. I got a chance to see her, see some fam and friends. I digress, but so that was nice to recharge. But it's always good to get out in nature, man. I recommend it to anybody, even if you're not somebody that's like super outdoorsy. Just put on some sunscreen, take a little bug spray, you'll be all right. Some nice shoes. But I just Googled hiking near me, and I found this really cool spot, and it's pretty remote. Like both times that I've gone there now, there hasn't been a lot of people there, which is awesome because here in Nashville, it's kind of hard to find places nearby that people don't already know about through social media and whatnot. You know what I mean? And on one end, I think it's cool that it seems like since COVID, a lot more people are recognizing the benefits of just getting out of the house and getting out in nature and getting out of your head. When I'm hiking, I don't even, as much as I love music, I don't even put anything in between my ears just because I love, just the sounds of nature. And so I got a chance to do a little bit of that this past holiday weekend, and it was cool. It was cool. But speaking of cool, I'm not going to rant too much because I have a tendency to do that on these things. And even though it's my show, I don't like to make it really about me. But I will say I've made a conscious effort in the past few years to kind of put myself out there a little bit more. We all deal with grief differently, and you don't know how you're going to handle it until you find yourself in the throes of it. And I never go too deep on here in terms of like my personal life, just because I think that, one, I've worked through a lot of it, and two, just kind of the way that I roll. Like, the show's not about me. It's about the guests. It's about their journey. It's about them, what they're persevering through and chasing their dreams. And I kind of scratched the surface of my life. You know what I mean? Because like I said, it's about the guests of the show. It's not about me. It's about the guests and their journeys of marching forth. I digress. But this particular episode might be one of the most personal and introspective and cool conversations that I've had with anybody on the show. And I love all the conversations that I get to have on this podcast. But we got real personal on this one. And this week's guest, she is awesome. We met through and got connected through mutual friends and awesome people in the local Nashville music scene. And like I said, over the last couple of years, I've made a conscious effort to kind of get out there a little bit more and get more involved because there's so many awesome people in the local music scene. She is none other than Julia Who. She is a singer-songwriter and multi-instrumentalist. She is awesome on the bass. She plays in Sleep Nation live with my friends in Sleep Nation on the bass. And in addition to that, as I just mentioned, she's got a hell of a voice too. And she just released her EP Shadow Self Portrait back on May 7th. And it's an awesome introspective listen front to back. And like I said, on this conversation, we go pretty deep as far as, life experiences with relationships, her battles with addiction, some life choices that she made that she regrets, but at the same time helped her grow to get where she is now. And it was just really cool, man, talking with Julia and learning more about her story. So many people come to Nashville to chase their dreams, to get plugged into music. And like I said, from mutual friends and Sleep Nation to Barry Donegan, like, there's mutual circles here, and I feel really, really privileged to have been welcomed by these folks in the music scene in Nashville with open arms. And like I said, this episode is, I love all the conversations I get to do, but this was one I really appreciated because typically, at least for me, speaking for myself as Mikey here, I usually don't go, like I said, super deep. And this conversation was just kind of pulling some stuff out of me with Julia and her experiences. And she's a real open book, man. She wears her heart on her sleeve. She put it in Shadow Self Portrait, and we talk about all of it on this one. So without further ado, I'm going to shut my big yapper and give you guys my conversation with Julia Who. Here it is. There we go. All right. Well, Julia, thank you again. I really appreciate it, especially since this one's a little makeshift since they're redoing my apartment. But I really appreciate you joining me. Thanks so much for taking the time.
Thank you so much for having me, Mike.
You're welcome. Well, we have obviously mutual friends in the music scene in Nashville. And really where I like to start, though, beyond the wonderful people in the local music scene is how long have you been in Nashville, Julia? And when did you start playing music?
Well, I've been playing music my whole life. I started playing bass when I was 21, so I've been playing for like 14 years. But I've been in church music. I got started like singing in choir at church when I was really young. My mom, she cantors at church. I was raised Catholic, so that was a big part of my upbringing. And then I went to college, studied music in college. When I was in my last year of college, I started picking up the bass. And then it just kind of came to me so naturally. So I started singing and playing rock music. But I've been in Nashville for since COVID, essentially.
Where did you grow up?
I grew up in Louisville, Kentucky. Woo-hoo.
And you said you grew up Catholic?
Mm-hmm. So did.
Same. Same.
Where'd you grow up?
I grew up in Toledo, Ohio, so I grew up about an hour south of Detroit.
Okay.
And it was pretty cool. Like there was a good local music scene that I started covering when I got a little bit older for a paper called Toledo Free Press, which is now back. I think they're operating as a nonprofit now, but I always loved music, but I could never really play. And I grew up playing sports, so the
Oh, that's
first time
cool.
you pick up a guitar, you think you're going to be like Eddie Van Halen, and you're like, oh, this is really, really hard.
Yeah.
Um,
It takes a
so
little time. It's just
yeah,
like
yeah.
sports, it's just like sports in that way. It takes time to develop the skills, and you have to stick with it and, find a reason to be passionate about it or, you know, whatever it is that keeps you going.
Yeah, yeah. So, I mean, for you, you said that you grew up Catholic, but the bass, like, what made you really gravitate towards that instrument?
Well, when I was a senior in college, I met someone that we started singing Beatles songs together, just like doing that. I lost my voice and he was a guitarist. And so when I lost my voice, he just sort of put the bass in my hands and started showing me licks. And it came to me so naturally that it was like, oh, oh, this should be my instrument. Okay, and it's kind of funny because a lot of bassists start by playing guitar and then switch to bass. But I did it the other way around where I had picked up a guitar several times and didn't really have it under my hands yet. But when I picked up the bass, it was just such a match. So just went with that and we started a band. Um, we played together for 14 years. We stopped playing together last year, but so now I'm doing my own solo thing. But that was how I started playing bass.
So outside of like your mom, was anybody else in your family musical?
Yeah, my sister and my mom and I, we used to sing together. Like we would just, you know, out of nowhere. And actually, all of my aunts and uncles on my mom's side, they're all musicians. My grandmother was an opera singer. She retired from University of Louisville as a piano teacher, and she also played the organ. Um, so there's sort of a generational thing there, but mostly it was me and my sister. My brothers and my dad weren't very musical, but the girls were.
So growing up Catholic, I know there's like varying degrees of Catholicism. I felt like I grew up, and I feel like I can like speak on it just because I grew up Catholic. So for any of the Catholics that listen to this, I'm not crapping all over that religion. But there's varying degrees of severity to it, right? Like any religion. So like the household that I grew up in, like we went to church on Sundays and I was an altar boy and everything, but like my parents weren't like anti rock music or anything like that. You know what I mean? Like it wasn't like, oh, you're listening to Black Sabbath, that's like devil stuff. So for you gravitating towards rock and roll, like was there any resistance as you went in that direction or no?
No, my mom was mostly the one who was practicing, and she was the one who made me go to church and had me join the choir and everything. But she was fairly open-minded, I would say. So I'm really glad about that. So we listened to a lot of like classic rock in the house and oldies and just whatever. But mostly what we sang in the house was like folk music, you know, and just like, you know, that sort of thing.
And you mentioned the Beatles earlier. Were they one of the first bands that really grabbed you when you started playing?
Yeah, actually, well, actually, yeah. My when I was maybe 10 or 12 or something, my sister, she started gravitating toward the Beatles really hard. So of course, I picked that up. So when I started playing bass, um, that guy I mentioned earlier, he had the full anthology of sheet music for the Beatles, like in this one book, right? So I started learning Paul McCartney bass lines out of that, because I was reading music, and that seemed to be like a good way for me to sort of, get my chops and learn and understand how bass works. So there was a lot of Beatles. Also learned a lot of Pink Floyd at the time and classic rock.
I mean, those are some pretty awesome ones to start with, man, especially like
Yeah.
Paul McCartney and Pink Floyd. My stepdad was really into them. I remember it wasn't until I was older. I mean, everybody knows like Dark Side of the Moon, but I think it was like the Animals record. I think,
That's a really good one.
yeah, yeah, there was stuff, and then later on, like Division Bell and all that, like started getting into that as I got older. But I always gravitated towards the metal, like
Yeah.
at a young age, because my big brother, I've said this like a million times on this show, so the people who listen to a lot are gonna be like, oh, here's Mike repeating himself again. But like, when you're young, even like a 2 year age gap, you're like, that's my big brother, and I have two older brothers. But my brother Brandon, he was 6 years older and he was from my dad's first marriage. So we'd see him like a couple weekends a month. And then when he's 16 and started driving, he's like, I'm out of here. But in the mid 90s, he was like really into I think he was like 14 in 1996. So he was a little bit older than me, and like I grew up with like the grunge and all that, but he was really into like Metallica and Guns
Mhm.
N' Roses and Korn. So
Yeah.
initially I started listening to that stuff because I wanted to be like him. But then as I got older, that was like always the music that spoke to me the most. So to this day, I mean, I love rock and roll. I love like 80s new wave, like the new wave night
Yeah.
that all y'all did about a month ago, as we are recording this. Like
Oh,
I
I love
love
that.
all that stuff. Like my mom that was like her wheelhouse, was like Sting and the Police, and then my dad was like
Oh, yeah.
classic rock and Clapton, but the heavier stuff I gravitated to at a pretty young age.
That's pretty cool. It's cool that your parents were they were open to that for sure. Like I remember being in like seventh grade, and I brought home a Marilyn Manson CD, and I was playing it as loud as I could, just sort of trying to be rebellious, I guess, and piss people off. But my mom, she didn't say anything about it. She was just like, okay, you know.
The first Marilyn Manson, that was one where I think like the imagery, especially at that time, like the shock rock stuff. Like now, as you get older, like even Barry and I talked about this because he was talking about growing up in the '80s with like the Satanic Panic and stuff, especially in like Nashville and being in like the South. And he said like his household was cool and like they understood music and creativity and everything, but like at large, that was kind of like, oh God, if you play the record backwards, you're gonna go do whatever. But yeah, the first CD I ever got, I had to take back the same day. It was like a Metallica Until It Sleeps EP, and there was a live track on there, and he just said like MF like a bunch of times, and my mom was like, "Oh, honey, you gotta take that back." It was a place called
Oh,
CD Warehouse. That was the very
oh
first
yeah.
place I got a CD. But did you guys have any of those in Louisville? CD Warehouse?
Well, I think we had CD Warehouse. There was a really cool store when I was growing up called Ear Ecstasy. And I loved that store. And they had bands play there all the time. It was really neat. And it was just um, in the sort of hipster area of Louisville, So that it's closed down, but I remember going there when I was a teenager, and I just loved wandering through there and looking at all the records and everything. But I never had to return anything. I was pretty good at hiding anything. If eventually I just kind of got to a point where it's like, if I think my mom's not gonna like this, I'll just, play it subtly.
Yeah, I wasn't real smart. I wasn't as smart as you, Julia. I put it in like the family. I put it in the family entertainment system in the living room, so
uh,
everybody heard it, including mom. And she's
that
like my
is
biggest supporter, so if she hears this, like it's not, I'm not taking a dig at her. She's just trying to look out for her baby boy. I was like 9,
sure.
um, but but yeah, no, as I got old, well, and I'm sure if they heard some of the corn lyrics, like I remember playing Alter Bridge in the car with my dad like 10 years ago. They're one of my favorite bands. He's like, this is a little heavy. And I'm like, Dad, if you think this is heavy, trust me, there's some stuff that I listen to that would probably make your head explode. But but it was pretty cool. Like they both listened to like music was pretty much on all the time. So it was cool to grow up in a house like that, So I'm glad to hear that your parents weren't like for lack of a better way to say it, well, just like more strict, because I know sometimes, parents can be, especially with music and lyrics and stuff, they can be a little crazy about that stuff. Do you remember your first show that you played live, like outside of like the church setting?
That I played like playing bass and stuff. Yeah, actually, it was on Western Kentucky's campus at their coffee shop. And that was my old band was called Mythago, and we played a little bit in Bowling Green, and we played down here actually a few times as well, and in Louisville. A couple of years ago, we headlined a Hunter S. Thompson festival. That was really cool. It's called Gonzo Fest. That was neat. And
Where was that at? Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
the Gonzo Fest, that was in Louisville, at a place called the High Horse. It was downtown. That was a neat little festival. They had spoken word and bands and all kinds of stuff.
So did you know pretty early on that like music was always going to be part of your life, especially playing it? That like was there a turning point, Julia, where it became more than because like for some people it's a hobby, like they pick it up and they put it down and like when did you know it was like okay, like if I live to be 90, like I'm always going to be jamming?
Ooh, I don't know. I mean, it's always been a part of my life. So I guess when it came time for me to go to college and I didn't know what else to study, I was like, well, I was a voice major in college. I studied as a mezzo soprano. Um, so I learned to play piano a little bit and sang mostly. But really, I mean, I really started to write music when I started playing bass, when I was in a band, and had that kind of avenue. That was when, I actually, when I was in college, I composed a few pieces for different ensembles, for the ensembles in the music program there. But I really got into songwriting as a result of playing bass and singing in a band. So I don't know. It's always just sort of been a part of me. I didn't really have an aha moment.
That's cool though. I mean, I think it's cool when you just know something is like a love that you're going to have forever. You know what I mean? Like, and I think for especially for musicians or people who like cover music, that I think that's kind of like the difference. Like, it's more than just like something that you put on in the background or like something that you have on in the car. It's like it's always around, you know?
Yeah.
Um, so how much touring did you do, Julia, before? And thanks again for taking the time. I appreciate it. And again, I apologize that this isn't my normal professional setup with the renovations, but how much touring did you do before you made the jump to move to Nashville?
I didn't really do any touring then. And there's sort of some backstory there, and it's actually backstory that gets sort of into that EP. Which my EP is called Shadow Self Portrait, and um, the band I had was with my now ex-boyfriend, and we dated for 9 years. Um, we broke up about 5.5 years ago and kept playing for a while until last year together, which is odd, a little awkward, but um, that relationship sort of it was not a very healthy relationship, I will say that, and it got to a point where like we weren't really doing much except writing, and we recorded some stuff in the studio. Um, it was a pretty damaging relationship, to be honest, except for, I did come away with this beautiful gift of having a new skill that I love, which is playing bass. But when we broke up, it was pretty devastating. And Shadow Self Portrait sort of came about in the years afterwards, um, as I was sort of processing the demons that came to the surface as a result of that breakup, and me trying to reintegrate myself into a new world, on my own. So, and it was a difficult process too. There were a lot of challenging steps, and each song that I wrote was a reflection of that.
Well, I'm sorry that you went through that, man. Like it's like yeah, heartbreak and long-term relationships are that's like a tough, when you care about somebody and you spend a long time with them and you love somebody, like it's hard when it comes to an end. Whatever, wherever you find yourself in that, whether you're a person that wants it to come to an end or you don't, or it's kind of mutual.
Yeah.
Um, yeah,
It was definitely it was one of the hardest things I'd ever done in my life, honestly. Was it like that relationship was definitely like codependent, and in many ways it was abusive, and I was in denial about that. So when I left, I didn't want to leave, but I knew I had to in order for life to get better. Um, and in doing so, yeah, life, it happened right before COVID and the lockdown happened. And I sort of had to isolate myself for about a year out in the middle of nowhere, just like I was out of my mind and trying to find hope when I saw no hope at that time. And then finally getting myself out of that state and moving to Nashville, I was able to start getting my foot in the door a little bit down here and rebuild myself from basically rock bottom. That was a really difficult time in my life, for sure. But those times that are like that, that really force you to reckon with yourself. Those are like some of the most defining, most character building, I guess. And it gave me an opportunity to see the things that what had not seen about myself because of how that relationship went. It was like I sort of lost my identity within within the context of that relationship. So I didn't even know who I was and what I was going to do, and I had to figure it out. And having done so, I would say that my life has done a total 180. Things are so different now, and I know myself now.
well, again, I'm sorry you went through that, man. But I'm glad you're in a much better place now. I relate to some of what you said, like the isolation part of it. I was in a relationship for about 3.5 years that ended um, pretty abruptly, and that's like the most I'll speak on it because I don't like to air out, personal stuff and like I'm good and everything, you know what I mean? But just relating to what you're talking about, like that part of it was tough. Like, being here in Nashville and like my close friends that I grew up with and all of my family, they don't live here. you know.
Right. Same.
So like on top of that, it's like I was dealing with that, and then more people, like 2021, more people passed away in that one year, like kind of in my circle, in my periphery, than any other year of my life. And I'm 37 now. Like the most like the worst one that I had gone through to that point was my grandpa, who I was really close to. Um, but he had a good run. You know, he's 84. He lived till I was 23, and I got to spend time with him before I moved to Nashville in my later 20s. But like, so yeah, so I relate to the isolation part with it. Really kind of, I think it like made my anxiety worse.
Yeah,
Um,
I feel that.
you do a ton of ruminating, you know what I mean? But for you, and again, I'm not trying to make it about me, but just relating to I relate a lot to that experience, like being on your own, kind of after you go through something like that. If
Sure.
you don't mind me asking, like how did you kind of pull yourself out of that, Julia? Like, was there like a turning point or a moment where, you know, things kind of clicked, like as you kind of get away from the relationship? Because at least for me, I felt like once, you know, once a little bit of time has passed, you can kind of look back at the past through a different lens, you know. But it took me a lot of time to get there, if that makes sense.
Absolutely. Well, it's been a process and it's been an ongoing process. And I would say that it's been just step by step and brick by brick. It's funny because after I broke up, after that relationship ended, but we still kept a musical working relationship, which probably was not the healthiest thing to do. But we did. And we played a lot of, probably more in the last 5 years than we did the whole previous 9 years playing out. Um, but during that time, like I spent a year sort of isolated. It was COVID. And then I couldn't take it anymore. I couldn't take the hopelessness. I had a friend open up um, their door and say, "You can come live here. We'll get you a job. I'll take you to work every day until you can get a car. We'll figure this out." And as soon as I was able to afford it, I got a car and moved out of there and started living on my own. And I found a job down here in Nashville that I really like. I still work there. I work in production full time. So I found a place where I feel like I belong, and actually, getting that job, I started working for my company as a stagehand. Um, and then 6 months later, they offered me a promotion as warehouse supervisor. And that, at that time, I felt like my life was falling apart again. I was making really bad choices and did some sort of terrible things, and trying to figure out how to find love, again, and making a bunch of mistakes in that arena. It was right in the middle of my personal life kind of like crumbling again that I got that promotion. And the HR guy at my company, um, once they offered me that promotion, we had a meeting like just between the two of us, and he said, and I'll never forget this. He said to me, "I can't wait to see you thrive," and that was definitely a big turning point for me, where I felt like suddenly I was in the right place, despite everything that was going wrong. I'd done something right, and that sort of kind of gave me um, that spark of hope again, you know, to keep working at it and keep making mistakes, keep being messy, and sort of figure it out, But even when I was writing the songs on the CP, they were written over a period of the last 5 years, essentially. And I didn't set out to write for an EP. I was just writing these songs as sort of expressions of my experiences and how I was feeling and how much, I was afraid and watching my demons sort of come to the fore. And you know, having had those sort of like key moments, like that meeting with my HR guy, it helped keep me from sort of losing my mind, like and helped me believe that I had hope and I had value, something to offer.
Well, again, I'm sorry that you went through all of that, man. I would not wish like heartbreak, and it's weird. It's like heartbreak and like death and like relationships ending. It's like they're all part of life, you know,
They
like
are.
it's inevitable that none of us get out of this thing alive. And it's like inevitable that at some point in time, if you're brave enough to be vulnerable and put yourself out there. It wasn't until I got older that I realized oh, that's why they call it falling in love. It's like, 'cause your ass is gonna fall, and you just you just hope that somebody's there to like catch you when it
Right.
happens, and that it's but you mentioned meeting with like your HR person, and it's like sometimes that's all it takes, though, right? Is like somebody else outside of like your own world and headspace seeing something in you that maybe you don't see in yourself at the time, and giving you that word of encouragement.
Mhm.
And it can really kind of really change things for you. You know what I mean?
Oh
Like
yeah.
especially when you spend a lot of time alone too. Like at least me, like I can get so up in my head, and like I overthink things to death, and it's like um
Same.
all it takes is like somebody just seeing like your potential, or like even doing this podcast. There's so many awesome people I've gotten to connect with, like Barry, like Brand, and Sleep
Mhm.
Nation, and it's just like
I love those
um
guys.
yeah, they're awesome. But yeah, it's a long way of me saying I'm glad you made it through. And I'm glad you brought up that too. And thanks again so much time for your time, Julia. Because when I was doing like an Instagram deep dive a little bit, which I hope doesn't sound creepy, I do that with all my guests to try to dig into, you know, make sure I do
Absolutely.
my prep work. But yeah, I saw you like there was a post you did where it was like I'm built, working on building like a stage. So
Mhm.
that was one thing I wanted to ask you about, was like that aspect of music for you too, in addition to playing music. How did you get involved with those guys?
Well, when I first came to Nashville, I started dating another person who I had been working a job in Portland, Tennessee, that I got so tired of working. So the guy I was dating, he knew the guys at the company I work for, and he knew that they were after COVID and everything, a lot of people had left. So, all of those production companies were looking for hands. So he called this company, and he was like, I know a girl. And I'm going to be totally honest. It's a weird sort of story. The guy who got me that job where I work now, that, when I got that promotion, I cheated on that guy, right? With a total psychopath. And so I sort of got like, uh, it was a terrible thing to do, and that was one of the big mistakes that I made. But and a lot of what Shadow Self Portrait is actually about that whole situation, And so he got me the job. I worked there for 6 months, cheated on him, and immediately got offered a promotion at the company. So it's like I didn't do the right thing in that one arena, but they saw the potential in me over here, and you know, it, it's weird how that worked out. But I love my job. I love working in production, and I've gotten a lot of skills from working there that I wouldn't have had otherwise. I can drive a forklift, and I'm a certified stage technician, so and I can do a few things, So um, ultimately, the that person that I cheated on, even though that relationship didn't work out, I'm ultimately grateful to him for helping me find a path here, you know. And I don't think he knows that, but I am grateful to him, even though things did not work out well, and I made some awful choices along the way.
Well,
Pretty
you
messy.
gotta you gotta forgive yourself though, right? I mean, like, no, again, in life, like that's what makes us human, is we make bad decisions sometimes, man. And like,
Right.
I don't think any of us wants to ever be judged by our worst mistakes, or the ones that we regret the most.
Right. But
Like one
like
thing,
I
it
have to be
happens,
honest about it, and it is a part of my story. It feels weird to tell people about that because ultimately, I know I'm opening myself up for judgment, but it is a part of my story, and it is a part of having done that and seeing what that feels like. Um, it made me really look at myself and notice that, take notice of the demons, the things that I didn't realize were part of my inner world, the unconscious. motivations and drives, like my fear of being unloved or unlovable, um, and feeling like the bad guy in somebody's story and having to be honest about it to myself. So it's a very vulnerable place, but it's the truth.
Is that where the title Shadow Self-Portrait came from? Like that notion of the shadow side that people don't see?
Well, that I didn't see until I started getting messy too. The things that you hide from yourself. And, you know, until I did a really bad thing, I was the sort of person who would be like, I wouldn't do that thing. And, at that point, like I can say with full honesty that I was looking for somebody to love me the right way when at a time when I didn't know how to love myself, you know? And that's part of that shadow. And that's some of the material in that EP.
The first one just came out. I mean, when this hits people's ears, it'll be May, but the first one's Myself Somewhere, right? Was that?
That is that's the single that I just released and released a music video for. And Barry did the video edits for me. So shout out to Barry Donegan. Thank
Yeah,
you.
I was gonna ask you because I watched it on YouTube before this and I really enjoyed the song and the lyrics, but the video turned out great too. Can you kind of talk about sort of like the concept behind both the songs and the video? Because it was definitely really personal.
Yeah. Well, I wrote that song myself somewhere. It's called Myself Somewhere. I wrote that song actually right after I cheated on that dude. And I was feeling like, lost, just totally lost. Like, what am I doing? I don't know what I'm doing. I don't know how to think. I don't know what I'm doing. One of the lines in the song is, chemtrails cross out my wrongs with exes. And I literally meant ex-boyfriends, you know? So, it's like I want to lose myself somewhere and just like be someone else and things I wish I didn't do. And then the video, that video is sort of fun. I just there's this road in Franklin, Kentucky that's covered in graffiti, and it sort of reminded me of like, I would love to cover myself in graffiti and walk down this road and find myself somewhere else, But I love that road. It's a really cool place. And then just the idea of being like trying to wash myself clean and wash my sins clean, There's that Catholic upbringing, but you know, trying to lose those parts of myself that are ugly.
The Catholic guilt is a real thing, man. It's a real it is. And again, I don't want Catholics listening to this to be like, he's slamming us. I
No,
could
not
just
at all.
speak from experience, man. Like, I mean, the good in it is I felt like it taught me a good faith foundation, but again, just kind of relating to what you're saying, like it's been hard for me to forgive myself for mistakes. Um, and I beat myself up a lot. And it's weird. It's like it took me like years of like just therapy and getting older, going through life experiences, moving down here, which I had an awesome opportunity. One of my mentors opened a door for me down here, and that's what got me out of the Midwest and got me down to Nashville. But like it kind of takes like growing old and screwing up. I guess you just like the older you get, the more you learn. Like we're all human. We all make mistakes, whether it is
Right.
cheating or you whatever the case may be, man. And like and I don't know, it took me a long time, man, to kind of process like, all right, where does that come from? Like, why do I feel guilty about things that I didn't do? But you have to forgive yourself for the
Mhm.
things that you did do or other people who hurt you. I went through that too, like a relationship and but like I really loved her and it hurt and it was abrupt and it took a while for me to kind of understand it. Um and then you kind of get to a point where you're like, man, I think there's going to be aspects of this that I'll probably never understand. But at the same time, it's like, I guess you just hope that even wherever that person is now, you hope that they would feel like they were a better person for knowing you. Even if things didn't work out, you know what I mean? And that's why, like, even though I've kind of spoken surface level about a little bit on the show, like, if it were ever to reach her ears, like there's no bad blood on my end. Like, I hope that she's happy genuinely. But also that relationship ending kind of was one of the things that kind of got me back into doing, this podcast more. Kind of, that void of her not being in my life anymore kind of, in a way, kind of opened up things creatively for me. And it was weird, like my life was kind of mirroring the theme of my show. Like, what, March 4th is like perseverance and moving forward, and I'm like,
Right.
it's like that old, like, life imitating art, or art imitating life type of thing, where I'm like, oh wow, I'm like, my life is kind of mirroring sort of like what I'm going through in my personal world.
Mhm.
But yeah, I mean, I'm glad that, through the struggles and like the pain, that you went through, and the mistakes that you made, like, that you had a channel for it, with music, because I think
Yeah.
that's so much of it, Julia, is like you said, there's things that, you messed up, you made mistakes, you're human, but at least you have like a creative outlet, which is a positive channel to put that stuff to.
Right.
Because I think a lot of people struggle to find because that energy has to go somewhere,
It has
right?
to go
And
somewhere. Yeah. And, I would say as well that, like, in the process of, as I was processing these things through music, I was also learning um, how to be a human being and, you know, make my mistakes and, you do bad things and not believe myself to be bad. It's not that I'm bad. It's that I'm a person and you know, yeah, but learning how to forgive yourself, yes, and also learning how to be brutally honest with yourself about what it is that drives you to do things that don't align with your core values, you know, because and so much of that is like it's the demons, it's the fear, and learning to get in touch with that fear, um, and sort of transform it into something that can help shape you moving forward. March 4th.
yeah, thanks again for opening up and being vulnerable on this too, man. I really appreciate it, because I know it's not like, or at least I think for a lot of people, I hesitate to speak for other people, but I know even for me, like, it's not easy talking about stuff like that, especially like relationships and mistakes and things like that. Like,
Yeah.
you know, I don't know. I think what I've learned too, like, is like, I think most people we're all just like, most people I think aren't out to get other people. They're not looking at, like, if they're going to climb, it's not because they're going to step on somebody else to get a step forward. I think inherently most people are good, and there's things that happen, there's things that you experience when you're young, um, that you don't realize till you're older, where it's like, oh, maybe that's like that little kid in me that still isn't healed. And there's things that I've done that I wish I could go back and change. Even relationship wise, there was times where I wish I was a better listener, for sure. Um,
Sure.
and I wish I wasn't up in my head with my anxiety, trying to put out a fire that didn't exist, instead of being in the present moment. You know what I mean? And I know
Oh
she could sense that. You know what I mean? When you're with somebody long enough, they, that energy you have together, they can feel when you're like not present. And I know that probably wasn't easy for her. Like, like, why can't Mikey just be like here? And it wasn't a reflection of her. I think it was, me, like, feeling like, hey, am I good enough? And I'm having a moment. I wish I wasn't having a moment with my anxiety. So it's all part of like life and learning, man. You know what I mean?
Oh yeah, when you were saying you were having anxiety and you wish you weren't having, like, isn't it funny how, like, having when you're having anxiety and it makes it worse because you wish you weren't having it. It's just like perpetuates the problem.
Like, when I was young and I had a panic attack, like, I didn't know what it was. You know what I mean? I just knew it scared the bejesus out of me. And then you get older and you realize, like, oh, this is just adrenaline. This is like the caveman in you, when, like, way back in the day when we were like running away from like mastodons and saber-toothed tigers, and there was like real, fight or flight. Like, and now, like, thankfully now, like, I don't have them as much anymore, and I kind of learned to sit with it. But that's why I also admire people like Bran, from Sleep Nation, so much, or like Barry,
Mhm.
because it's like their energy is like, I don't know, like, they're like, Bran was like open arms from Jump Street, and like, Barry, I saw him play live before I met him, and like, he was on the show, and he's a high energy guy, but like, even watching like his training videos, like there was even one with you where it's like he's just so like his energy is like, you can do it, come on, you know what I mean? It's just
I
like
know.
I admire people like that, and that's like disarming, you know what I mean? Like it's inspiring to me, you know what I mean? And then it was funny, like the last time I hung out with Bran, like we were talking in the car, and he like read me perfectly, or where he like described how I was, like like my introverted personality, like being kind of like an extroverted introvert. I'm like, yeah, that checks
Yeah.
out, man.
Sort of
You
wear your
have an
heart on your
accurate
sleeve.
read.
Yeah.
Yeah. But bringing it back to you, thank you again for opening up, but bringing it back to like, um, shadow self portrait. When, Julia, did you know it was becoming like an EP? Like, did it start as journaling? Were you writing music the whole time? Like, when did you decide to make it like a body of work?
Well, I had written about 4 songs. I was 4 songs in, and I realized like I've got 4 songs that are about me and my inner world, and they're not like band songs. They're not for my band, my now defunct band. So I wrote a lot of stuff for my old band, and that stuff was more sort of proggy, experimental, classic rock vibes, but I called it art house rock. And um, these songs were definitely they were more personal. They were a different vibe, and I knew that they needed to go together and tell a little bit of a story about myself and about the journey coming from rock bottom. I mean, and there's so many angles here. The first song on the EP is called Evidence, and that was the first song that I wrote and on the EP, and I wrote it while I was struggling with a drug addiction, which I struggled with for 14 years. I've been clean now and sober for about 7 months. And that the song is called Evidence because there's evidence. Like despite I was more or less a functional drug addict, but knowing that there was evidence of it that I trying to hide it from everybody. Um, and I realized these songs were literally, I wrote them every single time I was sort of going through an internal crisis, and really facing up front with my fears, and the things that sort of held me back or drove me to do things that, like I said, don't align with my values. When I got honest with myself, and seeing the evidence of these things, seeing the evidence of my fear, I remember I wrote a poem called Learning to Love My Demons, even when they ruined my life, trying to write these songs as a release from being held back by my own inner workings, my own internal mechanisms, and learning how to embrace fear in order to how to embrace it and do the hard thing anyway. So, and I, like for example, eventually, I quit using drugs, which was a very hard, hard thing to do. And I was really scared to do it because I had been doing it for years. Um, and it became such a part of my lifestyle. And I knew that like the only way to sort of shed my past ultimately was to let go of that and that scary thing. I was afraid and I did it anyway. And by being honest with myself about what I'm afraid of, it sort of gave me an avenue to face it and act anyway and do what I needed to do anyway. And also just being honest about like even when I have done bad things, when I cheated on that person, um, knowing that like I wrote a song about that called Always the Bad Guy, and that's on that EP. And it's like and it basically, it's saying that I'm always the bad guy and here are the reasons why I was the bad guy. And there were real reasons because I felt like, I wasn't enough, you know? And when you feel like you're not enough and you stay anyway, which is the wrong thing to do, I should have just, if I would have known that I was afraid of being unlovable at that time, I would have left, you know? But at the time, I was not aware that that was a basic inner drive, So I wrote that song, Always a Bad Guy, saying, this is why I did the wrong thing. That doesn't mean it was the right thing to do. I'm still the bad guy, but I still had my reasons, and my reasons were my feelings, and my feelings are valid.
I appreciate you sharing that. Yeah, man, I don't like. I relate to self-sabotage in some ways. Like if you don't feel worthy, sometimes you can like sink the ship because you don't feel like it's, you're worth, you know, um,
When you don't recognize your worth, you hurt people worse than you would want to. Because, I will say this, like, I never intended to hurt anybody. I was seeking external validation instead of finding my own internal peace, and believing in myself. I was seeking out my self-worth out, from outside sources, and that ended up hurting not just myself, but other people.
how Julia, and thank you again for being so honest and vulnerable, man. I really appreciate it. Because like I said, I don't take people to places they don't want to go. I'm not like,
I'll go
I'm
there.
not like, I'm not like a gotcha person where I'm like, I'm gonna try to ask like all these, um, but I have been open, and guests have been open with me, whether it's like anxiety or relationships or self-sabotage or not feeling good enough or, addiction, whatever the case may be. And
Well,
so
if
I do
you,
appreciate you being vulnerable.
oh, I have to be if I'm going to tell a story about this EP. There's no not telling the truth about it. And that it's a very scary thing to do. I'm not going to sugarcoat it. I'm over here bearing my soul to the world, and but that's what that EP does. And if you understand the things that I was that I was learning how to transform about myself, you know, I feel like I'm a much stronger person as a result of it, but it is a very dark place. And it's got this heaviness for me. The music itself isn't really too heavy, but instead of it being an exploration of music, it's an exploration of my inner world. And those were the things that shaped it. So you don't get that EP tells that story about me. So, I have to be honest about it.
I think there's a lot of people who can relate to this. Like I relate to that, to the feeling unlovable thing. I don't know if I've ever said this on the podcast, but just because I'm relating to you right now, with what you've gone through, like, and those feelings of feeling unlovable. Um, like after both the relationships that I was in, I felt that way. Um, but especially with my struggles with anxiety and like all of that. And you get close to somebody, and then when you get rejected or it doesn't work out, um, it kind of makes me go inward even further. And like and again, I don't talk too much about my personal life on this, so I'm treading lightly because again, like I'm good, and I genuinely hope they're good. Like there's no bad blood. Like I truly hope they're doing well. But like my biggest fear after everything that I went through, and I'm still dealing with it, is like that unlovable thing. Because I'm like, God, like if somebody gets close enough to me with some of like the anxiety and OCD stuff that I deal with and like intrusive thoughts, are they just going to think I'm too freaking weird, man? So, but yeah, just because you were like digging deep on stuff, and again, I appreciate you being vulnerable because, like I said, it's not my goal to like ever take people somewhere they don't want to go, but yeah, it's weird. It's like being vulnerable is like one of the bravest things that you can do, whether it's in love or whether it's in career, taking chances in your life, moving to a new place. Um, I'm glad it sounds like you're in a better place though.
I sort of came to a realization that, you know, everybody needs love. They need to love and be loved and all this. But the truth is that you lose everyone too, right? No matter what. Whether it's through breakups and divorce or death, if it lasts forever. And that's part of the pain of life, but it's also part of what makes it so beautiful. So I never gave up on love. Even after making all the mistakes, it's like, okay, I've made those mistakes. Now I know what it is I need to know about myself. I know I need to learn how to love myself. Um, and in that way, I've found love, you know, and it doesn't mean that like relationships are any easier. It just means that like they don't define me anymore. Um, and I know that love is the ultimate risk, and it's the risk that you have to take if you want to feel fulfilled, because it's all about love, right? Life is love, and love hurts.
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
it hurts, but it's what gets you through.
Yeah.
Doesn't always hurt.
Well, right. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, and like,
Ah, it sounds so
um,
dark. Sorry. But you know, like
no,
that's sort of how I came to. You know, because I feel like I could have gone the other way and said, "Fuck it," you know, I'm not fuck relationships, fuck trying to find love. Love is always going to hurt you, but it's like, okay, yeah, love can always hurt you, okay, but it's necessary, you know. And without that, it's not the kind of hurt where it hurts you because it's being abusive. It's just like it hurts to sometimes be painfully, brutally honest and bare your soul. And it's worth it. It's always going to be worth it. I mean, you know, that fear of being unlovable, well, you know, I sort of had to face that fear. If I'm unlovable, that means I'm unlovable to myself. And I'm going to hurt myself. You know, like there's going to be times when I just screw up and I have a hard time liking myself and I have to love myself anyway, no matter what.
it's well said, man. You're giving me a lot to think about. I feel like the universe is like speaking right now. It's like, yeah, I'm glad that you're for real though. I'm glad that you're climbing that hill and from the interactions that I've had with like Barry, he's freaking awesome, man. Like
No, no, he's
I
so cool.
I feel like that dude puts a battery in a lot of people's backs, man.
I do
And
too.
everybody can use a Barry, and I'm not just saying that because he's done the show too. Like he's
Right. Oh, he's an awesome
um
guy.
yeah, he seems like a really good dude in the time that I've spent around him. Um, and the live stage intensity, man, I don't like I've seen a lot of shows, man, and there's very few people that I've seen bring that kind of energy, man. I told him that when I went to Zacapalooza, I had never seen them play live before, and I'm like, who is this dude? Like in these Orlando
Right?
Magic shorts, like jumping around and like getting in the crowd. And that's what was cool when he came on here too. It was cool talking to him, like knowing that he's a fellow sneakerhead and stuff. Cause I know his shoes because I'm like a big shoe guy.
He has so
And
many shoes.
yeah, and and his taste too. Like he had some like I think like what the Giannis is on, like really colorful and like Pumas and stuff. Yeah. So shout out to Barry. Well,
Shout out.
to put a button on this bad boy. And thanks again, Julia, so much for taking the time and for being vulnerable. You've pulled some stuff out of me that I usually don't share. And like I said, I always tread lightly, especially with relationships, man, because you know,
It's
I'm
difficult,
grateful.
you know?
Yeah, yeah, it is, and I don't ever want to like there. I feel like you know, on one end, social media and podcasting and stuff is really positive. Depending on what lane you take it down. You know, like there's the lane of like vulnerability and honesty. And I'm not saying that to like toot the horn of like what we're talking about right now, but it's coming from that place versus coming from like a dirt place. You know what I mean?
Right.
And I've always treaded lightly with it with myself because I know like compared to a lot of people, like I have a really awesome life and I never want to sound like, oh, like, you know, like
But you have your struggles, and you know, like that's the thing. It's like when you try to compare it to somebody else, you know, it's like your struggles are yours and they're real. I want to just remind
yeah,
you of that, you know, and it's okay. Like it's okay to struggle, and you know, it's good to remind yourself that you know of the good things you have for sure. But I just like whenever people say something like, you know, I know I have it better than a lot of people. I do the same thing, and then it's like, yeah, but my struggles are real. They're real to me, and you know, that doesn't mean that they're the same struggles as other people's, but they are mine, you know, and they belong to me, and that's okay.
for sure. Yeah, like for you and I think for people listening, because like one of my best friends has been sober for gosh, I think Chad's been sober for 4 years now. I think it was 2021. Um, you know, so as somebody who's gone through, like you said, like your own, you know, trying, you know, forgiving yourself for the you know some of the poor decisions you made, Julia, but then also getting on the other side of drug use. Is there any advice that you would give? And I know we've talked about a lot of stuff kind of already, but for people who are listening and they find themselves within that, whether it's difficulties in relationship or forgiving themselves or forgiving somebody else for past transgressions, or people who are, they know they have a problem with substance abuse and they're trying to get on the other side of it. What are some things that have worked for you that you're willing to share that you feel like might be helpful to somebody who is finding themselves in that?
Well, ooh, I don't know. My journey was so personal to me, and when I quit using drugs, it was like I knew it was time. It had been 14 years, and I just like I felt it was time. It was time to just go through it. I did, you know, right before I made the decision to quit. First of all, I started working out for a couple of weeks before I quit. So, and that actually did give me an anchor, and I work out now 6 days a week, and it's sort of an anchor point. So that gives me a sort of a physical um, a way to physically cope, manage. Doesn't make it easy. It was hell going through withdrawal. But I saw a Instagram reel from someone. It just popped up out of nowhere. It felt like the universe was sending me this message. But it was a girl talking about you know how you can't snort it away, you can't gamble it away, you can't fuck it away. We try so many methods for escapism, as humans, and you keep doing this until you finally realize that the only way out is through. So you have to give yourself permission to feel the things that you've been running from, and to do it without any distractions. And you got to feel whatever the hell it is that you have inside of you, whatever it takes for you to heal. So you got to give yourself permission.
Well, I'm glad you got to that place, and that you channeled it through music, and that you're with a good dude and you're in a sick band with Sleep Nation and you have an awesome EP coming out. Who did you record with before I officially let you go and stop chewing your ear off? And thanks again so much, Julia, for being so vulnerable and so open, man. Like I'm grateful for conversations that I have on this podcast for this reason, because I think it's good for people to hear, because everybody struggles with all the things that we're talking about. So thank you.
Everybody does. Yes. Oh, you're welcome. So who did I record with? Well, my producer, his name is Bruce Guttridge. He was my producer. He played the drums on everything, and he also mixed it. And then I played just about everything else, the bass and the guitars and everything, except we did bring in a lead guitarist. So thank you, Zach, for doing that. Shout out to Bruce Guttridge for all your hard work and for believing in this music and sticking with me, even though sometimes we hate each other. You know what I'm saying? No, we don't hate each other. Just sometimes, things got a little tense, you know. But we both believed in it, and I'm glad that we saw it through to the end. I'm really grateful for Bruce for hearing these songs and believing there was something there and spending the time. So
shout out to Bruce. Can you tell people? And again, I don't want to spill anything that you will reveal in time, I'm sure, on your socials and everything. But is there a hard release date that you have, or is the goal to kind of put out May 7th?
May 7th. The EP will be out on May 7th and on the recording platforms. It's called Shadow Self Portrait by Julia Who.
Awesome. Well, by the time this hits people's ears, it'll be out then, man. So everybody, after you're done listening to this, go stream the whole thing, man.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Thank you for your time. Normally I ask people like anything they want to share with the theme of the show being March 4th, but I feel like we covered the whole gamut, man. So I feel like and again, Julia, thank you so much. Again, I'm working on, I feel like I apologize a lot, and I know I have a few times, but I am sorry that this is not the greatest background, and I am doing this on my phone with
it's okay.
the renos in my apartment. But thank you for taking the time, for real, and for being vulnerable. It's inspiring to me.
Thank you. And thank you for letting me share my story with you.
You're welcome. You're welcome. Well, I'll put up the links in the podcast description. Everybody go listen to Shadow Self Portrait. But for people who aren't aware of you, Julia, let them know where they can find you out there.
Oh, God. You mean on socials? Sorry. I'm Julia Who. You can find me on Instagram at Julia Who Tunes. You can find me on Facebook, Julia Who Music. I'm on YouTube, Julia Who, Julia Who, Julia Who, Julia Who.
Alrighty, dighty, there you have it. That was my conversation with Julia Who. Make sure you go follow her on Instagram at Julia Who Tunes. The links to all of her stuff will be in the podcast description for this episode. So y'all know what to do. Scroll down to the bottom of that podcast description, hit those links, and go follow and support Julia Who. If you love personal songwriting, if you love somebody who wears their heart on their sleeve, if you love rock and roll music, if you love great lyrics, please go listen to her EP, Shadow Self Portrait, out now, available wherever you get your music. So, once again, the links are in the podcast description at Julia Who on Instagram. Check it out, man. I just want to say directly to Julia, thank you so much for taking the time to join me on the podcast, and thank you for your patience as well. I know the audio isn't, it doesn't sound like it does on the intro and close because I did mention at the jump, y'all, but that particular episode, excuse me, was actually recorded in early April, and my apartment was undergoing a lot of renovations, which is cool. It's actually the first time ever since I've lived here. So it's nice when the price increases actually come with some upgrades. But my place was kind of tore up, man. Like where I normally do the podcast is in my living room and or excuse me, my dining room, and my fridge was in my dining room plugged in, my dining room table where I normally have everything set up. I had to move everything. So I actually recorded that episode on my phone on Zoom, and it still sounded all right, I think. But I want to thank Julia again for her patience. Because I don't want to come off as unprofesh. And I've been doing this a while, and I take pride in making sure it sounds good and everything, even though I'm not a great audiophile. I pretty much have every knob on my little mixing board at midnight, and just a couple of them are cranked a little bit more so you can hear my voice well. But anyway, I just want to say thank you, Julia, so much for taking the time to join me on the show and to get so personal. Like I said, that conversation, you were, just the nature of what you were discussing in your own life with what you had gone through in relationships, and sort of, battling your own demons with addiction and life choices and translating it all into your music. It was pulling a lot of stuff out of me. And again, I'm always conscious of like how much I reveal about myself, both to kind of respect my past and the people it involves, and not like dredge up stuff that I've worked through, even though I'm a work in progress, right? But also, I don't like to make stuff about my shelf. But this conversation, I felt like just lent itself to getting pretty personal, man. And not that we don't do that on this show. Those of you who listen regularly know that mental health is like it's a big part of this show, and it's a big part of my life. It's something that I talk about because there's a lot of people who struggle with it, and so it's not like we don't talk about that on the show. We definitely do. But this was one of the most deeply personal conversations that I've ever had on the show, Julia. So I once again appreciate your time. I appreciate your patience, and I appreciate how far that you have come on your journey, and that you're involved with awesome people in the Nashville rather music scene, like Barry and Sleep Nation, everybody, man. I'm very grateful. There's too many names to name, but I'm very grateful to have connected with you and Barry, Sleep Nation, and Chris, everybody that's in the Nashville music scene that I've been able to mingle with, who have welcomed me with open arms, man. Like it's been really cool these past couple of years to come out more and get out of my bat cave and see these awesome shows and learn more about the personal journeys of folks like yourself who are in it. And I wish you nothing but the best. You are welcome back on this show anytime. And once again, everybody, Julia Who Tunes on Instagram. Please go listen to her EP, Shadow Self Portrait. It's a great listen from front to back. I really enjoyed it. If you love rock and roll and great lyrics, you will enjoy that EP, man. And once again, if you enjoyed everything that you heard, if Julia brought you here and you're a first time listener, welcome aboard the pirate ship. Once again, you can follow me on Instagram at March 4th Pod. All of my links are in my link tree, which is at the bottom of the podcast description. So hit me up. You can follow me on all of those. And if you did dig the show, it would be awesome if you took the time to like and subscribe, if you share, tell a friend to tell a friend, the reels that I put on social media, if you engage with those, all of those things help the show rank higher in the algorithm, especially if you leave a rating and a review on whatever streaming service that you are listening to this podcast on. And that's what I want, man. I want to put more people onto awesome independent artists like Julia and everything that she's doing. Because she's making great music and the world needs great music. And it's a great time for music because I feel like the barrier to entry, if you're an independent artist, to make awesome sounding songs compared to back in the day, and the money it took to just work with somebody who could help you produce a good demo. Like there's a lot of, modern advancements in technology that I feel like help people get their music out there faster. But at the same time, there's so much that, sometimes it can take a little time to really dig through and sift through and find the stuff that you like. So I hope that this platform is one that is putting you on to awesome independent artists like Julia, like Sleep Nation, and the others that have been on this show. And yeah, so if you would be so kind to take some time to like and subscribe and share, all of those things are going to put Julia's music out to more people. So, Chattel Self Portrait, go listen to it. Julia Who Tunes on Instagram. I'm Mikey at March 4th Pod on Instagram. Well, I'm Mikey. It's just at March 4th Pod on Instagram. To some people, I am Bauman. To some people, I am Mike. To others, I'm affectionately known as Mikey. And I'm just a goofball on this spinning blue ball going through infinite, expanding, never ending nothingness. And I hope that you guys enjoyed what you heard. But take care of yourselves, man. I don't like to close on a somber note, but we did have a loss in music this week. A couple of members of this band have been on the podcast, and as Mental Health Awareness Month comes to a close, and May is the recognition of mental health here in the United States as far as being Mental Health Awareness Month. And like I said, it's just a big part of what we talk about in the show, that this conversation for this particular podcast with Julia Who, we talked a lot about it, but we recently lost in music a titan on the mic, a really funny guy, a really down-to-earth guy. It was tragic, man. Rest in peace to Adam Ramey of Dropout Kings. I first heard these guys during the pandemic. I heard Glitch Gang, and it really did make the hair on the back of my neck stand up, man. It was just so raw and awesome. These guys are trap metal titans. They've opened doors for other bands. They've collabed with so many other bands. I actually got a chance to see those guys live when they were on tour back in 2023, and they played at the Cobra in East Nashville. I was wearing my Lost Boys Lost in Tour raglan. Shout out Jad is Rad. And Black Cat Bill, who's been on the show, and Adam, we're both kind of hanging out in the back when Varsity was playing. And Adam came up to me and was like, dude, that's like the hardest shirt in here. And, way back in the day, I tried to get him on the podcast, and he's a busy guy, and we didn't end up being able to make it work out. But Black Cat Bill has been on this show. Their former drummer, the Cowboy drummer, shout out Joe, has been on this show, and they were great. Again, the whole band is just down to earth, humble dudes, and they've made a lot of noise. Glitch Gang. That boy, my Midwest accent really came out there. Glitch Gang. But Glitch Gang really blew up, probably like 4 or 5 years ago, 2021, 2020, helped get them signed to a label. And they've put out a lot of great music. And beyond that song, I mean, there's so many that I could name that I love. Hit Like This is one of my favorites from them. Scratch and Claw, Virus, the list goes on. But Adam passed away before his time. And, it's just another reminder, I think, of just sadly, how many people are gone too soon. And, I didn't know him on a personal level. When I met him in Nashville, it was very brief, but his energy at that show was no different than when those guys have played big festivals. The Cobra is an intimate room, and Adam loved to get out in the crowd, interact with people, put the mics in their face, jump up and down with them. He could scream with the best of them. He could sing with the best of them. Chester was one of his musical heroes, and their song "Virus," man, it's so crazy, like his cadence, how close it is to Chester on that one, and I recently learned about meaning behind that song, and it's sad how he left too soon. So I just want to say that I'm keeping the whole Dropout Kings family in my thoughts and sending positive vibes their way. I can't even imagine what they're going through, and I just want people to be good to each other and to talk to each other and to reach out for help. It's a monumental loss, and there's too many in music and in life that are gone too soon. I lost my buddy Ray from high school to start this year. I got that news on New Year's Day. And it's just, it's tough, man. It's tough. So I don't care if you're male, female, how you identify, what kind of music that you're into. Um, just know that there is light at the end of the tunnel and that you're loved. And, you know, be good to each other, because you don't know when the last time you're gonna talk to somebody is gonna be, when the last time you're gonna see a band live. Um, Life is really short and it's really precious, y'all. And be kind and be gentle. It's not weak to be kind. It's not weak to be gentle. And there's people battling things that we know nothing about. Um, and I'm devastated for Adam's family. I'm devastated for his lady. I'm devastated for all those guys. And I'm sending positive vibes their way. And like I said, I normally don't like to end things on a somber note, but just the fact that I've had a couple of members of that band on this show, the fact that Black Cat Bill and Joe took the time to come on this podcast and share their journeys with me. I got those guys back, I think, in 2021 and 2022, right as they were really popping off. And for them to make time for me, for anybody to make time for me, you guys as listeners, the guests of this show, I really appreciate it. And, it's a tragic loss right before his birthday. But if anything, I hope that his spirit, and I know, not even I hope, I know his spirit and his energy will live on through their songs, through his bandmates, through his family, through his friends, through all the fans of Dropout Kings and all the artists that he's collaborated with. So, go jam some Dropout Kings today. Tell the people that you love them, because you don't know when it's going to be the last time. So rest in peace to Adam. Keep the faith and be kind to one another and be kind to yourselves. Courtesy of Julia, off of her EP, Shadow Self-Portrait. Here is the song Evidence. Peace.
Potential I don't see.